Okay, cool. Yeah, do whatever you want. And literally do whatever you want. You can actually like cut it up reality TV style to make me out to be a horrible human being for ratings.
Hey folks, welcome to the first episode of the Pieces AI Productivity Podcast. On today's show, I'm joined by Jason Arbon, and we're going to be geeking out on AI for testing, user personas, and a whole lot more.
I'm Jason Arbon, and I'm a software test nerd. I've worked at like Microsoft and Google in the past on the Chrome browser you're probably using right now, the tester for that thing, back before it was cool. And I'm really focused on applying AI to software testing. And I'm the founder of Checkie.ai and Testers.ai. Checkie.ai, I have to say, is for testers because it's unassuming and doesn't sound that scary. Testers.ai is because most developers actually want testers to be AI. So it's the same code, same AI, just different websites. I used to work on of all things a thing called WinFS. You had Microsoft in your background, it looks like. I worked on WinFS for Longhorn and for a little while, but it was about organizing your information, like you were talking about the stuff, right? Um, and I remember I dug into like the history of like this thing, and there's a thing called a Memex. Have you ever heard of the Memex? It
Rings a bell.
Look it up. It was very interesting. It was this guy that basically thought it would be awesome if the computer could just record everything in his life, like just everything, like audio, visual, and everything. Of course, this was I don't know 25 years ago, maybe. Of course, so like audio recordings were like analog or something at that time, but I think he ended up working at or did work at Microsoft, and he tried to build a small version of it at some point. But it was called like a Memex. And that kind of got me interested in that too. But how do you collect all that information, but then how do you make it useful?
Yeah, because no point being the archivist of all this if you can't actually find the things out of it. And why did I record this part of my life if I can't?
The hard thing is making the data useful. I mean, you can record it, but yeah, how do you make it useful too? Is what's interesting. There's always been a hard problem, and it's starting to get cracked right now. Yeah, that's why I worked. I worked on. I don't know if you know or James said, but like I worked at on search at Bing for a while. So again, like just kind of always focus on kind of AI and how what's the relevance of it, right? You've got the corpus, but how do you make it relevant? Um, and same thing at Google. I worked on like personalized web search over there, and how to measure that, like you were saying earlier, like how do you if you have all this data on somebody, how do you know that it's relevant, right? You just if the words match, that really doesn't mean much. In fact, and actually getting personalization wrong is worse than not doing it at all. So for a long time, when I first landed there, it was like a bad thing to be doing because all the experiments turned out poorly in the data with personalization. Because when you get it wrong,
Yeah, because if you return the wrong data, then you're making claims about someone or something that's not correct. So I guess if
right.
you
And
do
if
a
it's
Google,
not personalized, they forgive the machine. They go, "Oh, dumb machine! I searched for this word, and you gave me documents that had that word in it." But if I say it's personalized or feels personalized, you're making a kind of a virtual promise to the user and its expectations. So when you get it right, they go like, "Well, duh," right? And when you get it wrong, they go like, "Dumb robot."
that's true. Actually, that's true. Yeah, we have this weird thing as humans where we don't get amazed at how when something works about just how amazing it is that this thing actually worked.
Right,
We get
right.
annoyed when it doesn't work. So the classic example is shouting at an Alexa device. And I apologize if you have one in your room that I've just set up.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's in the kitchen, but where it's relegated in a soundproof cage for this very reason.
Alexa's terrible. Hey, Alexa, do this. And it doesn't do it. And we all get
You want
angry.
to set an alarm in the kitchen? I open the cage and I say, set an alarm. It's like the world's most expensive and slow alarm on the planet. And then I close.
You say set an alarm and it says, I've now booked cinema tickets for this movie. It's like, no. But the thing is, we get upset about how it's not doing a good job. But just how amazing is it that we have this device in our home that costs like 20, $30 that is able to take our voice, process that voice, get a reasonable understanding of it, something that we as humans have evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to do, and then do something based off that. It's pretty
Oh,
amazing
it's totally
that it
crazy.
gets it right 10% of the time.
I think
And yet,
I know what killed it though. What ruined it all for everybody was Star Trek. But no, but it's true. It's like yeah, it's really interesting that people acclimate to things so quickly. Like what used to be amazing. I used to do I used to talk about AI and software testing, years ago, and I was kind of, um, saying someday the machines will just create tests by themselves and execute them, and then send the reports to people. But even now, you're like, why do you send a report to the person when the AI can actually just take a bug report and then try to fix it and iterate again? So like, why is the human in the loop? But I would talk like this. People are like, of course, they think I'm crazy. But then I did some conferences, this past year, a couple of them, and I'm showing things that, like, if I knew was even going to be possible 3-4 years ago, I mean, I would have, I don't know, I feel like I would have, had a can't think of anything politically correct, but I would have had I mean, my mind would have been blown, right? And I demo that stuff today, and like people are like, okay, yeah, yeah, but like, especially with testers, they're like, yeah. I remember I had this sales discussion. You might be relevant. Is uh, I'm like doing all this stuff, and the computer's doing all these things, and the AI is doing all these things, and all this analysis. And by the way, I said to them, like, I'm like, that's cool, right? And they're like, yeah. And I said, did it do things that you wouldn't have done? Yeah. Did it do things, and were those interesting and valuable? Yeah. And they go, I'm waiting for the elation, right? Some celebration. And they were just going like, yeah, but can it do this? Can it simulate 10 different users hitting the same resource on this back end database, and and measure the timing of it? And I'm like, I'm happy it can log in and do search for things on eBay and have the shopping cart, you know. But they're like, just the expectations just ramp up. And I remember it was a shopping app company, and shall be unnamed, I guess, but most because I don't remember it. But I went and there's all the engineers, engineering team, testing team, PMs are all in the same room, and they started talking like this. They're like, about the AI. They're asking like all these questions about, can I do this? Can I do this? And I'm like, kinda, maybe, and they're kind of disappointed because I'm supposed to be a sales person, and I'm just going like, not really, not yet. Just the basic stuff is working, and then they started drilling me on, well, what if everyone had a personalized custom user interface based on their previous history? And I said, how customized? And they said, like, could be anything. Like, could be like, if they only buy purses, and we know they'll only buy purses, like all they do is not just only the content is purses, but like like there's a UI for purses, right? That doesn't have the nav button to browse other items, for example. And the purses, like the UI opens up like a purse or something like that, right? Like very like hyper personalized. And you could almost argue that you can build things now that you didn't even think of before. The AI can generate something, some bizarre interface, even not just a permutation or variation. And I said, like, no. Okay. I'm like, well, this is not going well as a sales call. And then they said, oh, then I said, but how do you guys even trying to build that? Because that's pretty interesting. And they go, oh yeah, yeah, we're just thinking about that the other day. So it's this whole big barrier to the sales process and discussion. The expectation bar went up to infinite. If you say maybe, that expectation bar can go up to like to an infinite degree these days, because we're so, you know, acclimated to these amazing experiences from AI.
So I guess every time something new comes out that AI can do this, we go, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. But then it becomes normal. Oh, this is cool. It becomes normal. This is cool. It
Right.
becomes normal. So it's almost like every week there's something new that's come out, and we just accept this as, yeah, this is like the base level. And I mean, what you're talking about, having an AI that can test software, is pretty freaking amazing as it is.
You'd
If an
think.
AI can be given an application, understand enough about the application to know where to click, what to type, what to do, and whether the results are good or bad, that is amazing.
And there's a good demo even from the Android team. It's not just crazy people on the periphery. In Android Studio, you can go in and it's in demo mode right now, but you can highlight some code and say generate, end-to-end functional tests for this, and it tries to do it. And the guy's apologetic, going like, "It's in demo. It kind of works sometimes, but it's pretty cool." But guess what? I know everyone's thinking, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Can it generate 1,000 tests? Like, then they'll just complain about how long it takes to execute the test. They'll be like, oh, my 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 custom coded test that took me like 9 months to write, where they were 70% reliable. They'll execute it in like an hour. Like, it better finish those 1,000 tests in less than an hour. That it generate dynamically in like the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, you spent 9 months on that. This took 5 minutes. You're not. It's not going to run as quickly. Yeah.
Right, right. And that goes back to all the it's an interesting thing in AI in general, like other AI companies are dealing with this issue too, where well, I call it the teller problem, right? Like you're trying to sell an ATM to a teller. It's an awkward position to be in because the better the AI is, the more threatened some people can be with the product. Because if it can code, do developers want it? Kinda. Even most developers I talked to these in the last couple months are thinking, especially after the 03 release, where it's quantifiably should be smarter than them, right? Well, what do? They're not all walking around. This is amazing. This is awesome. They're saying, they're trying to pick at it. Well, it can only deal with so many files. Oh, it doesn't know people. Like finally, we're having developers say that I have people skills. I'm sorry, that killed me. I heard someone say the other day, an
Yeah,
actual engineer
we're not
he has
fighting for our
another
people
human in
skills.
like a month. It's like, well, but somebody's got to talk to the people and the business analysts.
Because that is actually true, though. When we think about how AI can boost my productivity as a developer, for example, it's got to change how I approach the code that I write. I was reading a blog post earlier on today where someone focused on this idea of a product engineer, not a software engineer or a 10x engineer. So the idea being, I'm not this amazing person who can write all this code that optimizes to the nth degree and does this cool coding things. Instead, I'm somebody who understands and empathizes with my user so that I can then deliver the functionality that that user wants. And to do that, I have to understand the user. And that's something an AI can't do. And AI is great when it's given instructions.
Okay, so here this is real world data. Okay, so I did uh, this experiment because I was worried about dealing with the testing community specifically and with AI. And so I thought, you know what I'll do instead of because I was having some success, like when GPT 3 kind of came out, things were starting to kind of work, and because you don't need you don't need an IQ of 160 or what 157 to do most testing work. And frankly, Einstein, if you had Einstein to do your testing work, it probably would be great testing because he's thinking about their stuff all the time. Um, but but no, but the funny thing is like, so it started to work. So I thought like, oh no, like this is going to scare people. So what I did? I went to that exact avenue and went, okay, well, obviously you need the human in the loop, right? And what is the human's value? And it's understanding I mean, people are still saying it all the time in the testing community. The human needs we need the user empathy, like you're saying, and we need the understanding of that business context. Well, two things have happened in the last 6 months. One is on the business context, you can upload a ton of context. By the way, most testers haven't read the specs, let alone the design documents, let alone the business, the quarterly reports to Wall Street. You know what I mean? Like the engineer working on the Starbucks mobile app does I highly doubt understands what the CEO said at the quarterly earnings were released when he talked about even importance of the mobile app and mobile payments or something, right? Like it just doesn't happen. Maybe he hears it indirectly through the PM, but you can copy all that data right into a context window today in the modern LLMs. So they can have a lot more context than most testers or most engineers, but nobody wants to try that because they don't want to know. But secondly, I thought, okay, I really want to find something though that the AI can't do, so the testers will go like, yeah, let's rally behind that and focus on that. Turns out, and haven't heard this a lot, and, but it's better than it's better than the testers at human empathy, and the reason is this, and I like and I've been around the block. I've been around user panel testing. I worked at the crowdsource testing with applause, even to the point we would test apps simultaneously at every airport around the world at the same time. We would have people testing digital or connected golf clubs swinging at Top Golf, testing the new apps. Like I get human empathy in the physical world and all that kind of stuff in testing. And the funny thing is this, and it was what's the first thing most people do in prompts, right? You go, you are a blank, and then you say do this, then you sometimes say think in stepwise fashion, but like when you're doing that prompt engineering, but like you say you are a research scientist, you are a whatever. So I challenge you, this is what's crazy. If you go to let's just talk about google.com. This is my first experiment. So I can say for google.com or any arbitrary website, I can just, you can upload the screenshot or the HTML or page text, and you can ask the LLM who would be using this website, what types of users and personas. And guess what it can do? Create a whole list of them. In fact, like if it's a medical devices company, it will create, hey, doctors might be here, right? Or medical salespeople. And then you go, okay, we'll build a profile out for those people. And it does, they've got 3 kids, they live in New Hampshire, like, they went to school here and they, they've had 2 years of sales experience, something like that. You can build all these little profiles. And I guess what you can do very quickly is you say, well, what would this person think about this website? Like, what should I do? I can do this. I'll even overshare. What would this person want to do with this, accomplish with the website? And how would they feel about it? Which is the most meta thing ever. And you know what? It's pretty amazing. It can take on those personas and give you feedback that person, that persona would have. And every tester, by the way, I guarantee the tester in the cubicle across the hallway cannot empathize or build a persona as complete as an LLM can for a medical salesperson in New Hampshire. And they can build infinite number of these personas and give you tons of great feedback. So I even say things like, so for your task, like what are you rated on all these different emotional levels, by the way, of like, one of the things that came up with is often is how connected does the person feel with the website? Like that's the most meta qualitative testing thing I've seen asked, really. And there's a company called usertesting.com, and I think they're worth like $1 billion or something today in market cap. They do this. But guess what? I've seen the results. This is better than the stuff that those humans produce. And so I thought google.com is the best example. Bear with 1 second. So, like, because I worked at Google, like everyone knows a Google page, it's simple and whatever. And so I thought the panel was this simulated panel of user for empathy and user feedback would say, oh, this is the best site on the planet, right? I came back with like, it was okay. And I go, what's the problem? So I dug through the data, and the AI had said things like, I don't feel connected to the site. It feels sterile. It doesn't feel like it's I don't feel any emotional attachment to this site. By the way, the European guy that it generated was like, hey, I'm a little bit concerned if I type my data into this search field, what happens to my data? And then it followed on and said this, there's a little privacy link at the bottom. The fact that it's at the bottom, and I'll stop a second. The fact that the privacy link is at the bottom means they probably don't really care about that. He said, and then it clicked on it. I let the bot click on the privacy link, and it said, I don't know what this means. All it is a giant, you can try it right now. It's a giant graphic of somebody that looks happy, like a cartoon of someone that looks like they're happy and they're good with privacy. Like there's not a lot of description or detailed content on that first splash page. So it said, yeah, at this point, I'm bailing because I don't really trust this service with my data. Now, I don't feel that way, first of all, but I haven't heard any humans describe it that clearly. And if you paid humans to give the feedback on the site, I don't think you'd even get that level of detail. So I think they can, honestly, if you use them right and prompt them right, they can actually do better. They're better at human empathy in a strange way, mechanically, but than most humans are.
And I guess as well, you've got that economy of scale behind it, and that you could, as you say, you can define me 100 different personas across this, and then run all of these against it to get a different set of data from each one.
That's the business model, Jim. Yeah, no, 100%. It's 100 times. It's actually literally, if you measure it, it's 1,000 times less expensive than human labor, and you get the results like hundreds of times faster than having to set up a project and ask people to do it, and it's just it's way better, faster, and cheaper on like by orders of magnitude in each category. 100. It's literally it's but nobody wants to try it. Guess what? Usertesting.com probably doesn't want to try it or talk about it.
Because part of the reason they're worth $1 billion is because you pay them a lot of money for people to come and do these kind of things.
Yeah, that's their business. Their margin is on human labor,
yeah,
not value. So
that's really interesting, actually, because so a while ago I was working for a mobile app development company in New Zealand, and we're building apps for truckers. And we had this design of what the app's going to look like. It was for vehicle inspections legally in New Zealand. Before you drive a truck, you've got to go through and inspect you. Does it have all the wheels or the tires there? Is the windscreen cracked? Stuff like
Right.
that.
Right. Mhm.
And the first design of the app, I was looking at it and going, no, this is not going to work for a trucker, because when you think about the average trucker, they are generally older generation.
Mhm.
They're sitting down most of the time, so they're not kind of the healthiest people. They're not always the most social people. Anyone who chooses a job where you're spending multiple days by yourself, it takes a certain kind of person to do this. And so there's little things like, where you're sitting in a truck all day, you don't normally have a healthy diet, with your eyesight not so good, you've probably got bigger fingers than the
Uh,
average, and
mm.
you can't see the screen so well. So all this lovely looking UI with these tiny little buttons
Right. Right.
isn't going to work for the user. So that's the kind of the user empathy that we had to do. Well, let's actually define that persona. What is the average trucker to a certain degree? Does this design work with the trucker? No, let's iterate on that. But essentially what you're saying is we could have optimized that. It'd be much more productive if we just gone to an LLM, which wasn't available at the time. But if
Mhm.
we went now to say, GPT-4, I need to build an app for a trucker, define the kind of persona of a trucker, what kind of accessibility things would I need to think about for the mobile app, what kind of considerations would I need to have, does this design match that persona? And it could have very quickly gone, nah, that's not going to work, and here's 10 reasons why.
Right. Yeah, and it would be an interesting experiment. I mean, I'll try it after we chat here too, just for fun. To if you have the old design screenshots, it'd be fun to see what the AI would have said about the original designs.
I don't. It's
See
the
if it
company I
can.
was working at a while ago, so I don't kind of have that. But
Well, maybe, but the cool thing is you can also maybe just sketch it, or maybe this is the cool thing about today. You go to Windsurf and say make an app with a bunch of tiny little buttons for truckers, and it'll do something.
mhm.
And then
And then just drop that in and see what it says.
yeah, it's what's weird is there's another there's a thing it cost me like 6 months of my life to figure out. I can share is that the more prescriptive I am with the LLMs, like everyone wants to go and say, okay, well, I'm an expert. I want to ask these specific questions of the LLM, right? Um, but I think it's why the agentic stuff is going to be a bigger thing in this year than it has than kind of hard coded workflows and stuff in the past or prompts. Is if you start with a prompt and then you let it like you just basically let these agents talk to each other and you parameterize the previous response, the next prompt. Um, let these things go. The less context and prescriptive workflow I've given them, in most aspects, it's unless it goes haywire, but in the places where it converges, it's far better than me. Like literally, it finds bugs, generates test cases that I would not have seen or noticed or reported, even if I had infinite time. But it also, when I gave it specific instructions, it also made it hallucinate because if you ask it for something that's not there, it's just far more likely to hallucinate something. And so when I let it say, what would you, rather than even saying like, this isn't like you were saying, sorry, there's one thing that triggered me when you said that, which is interesting, which is you're saying like, okay, maybe they got thick fingers, um, and and poor eyesight or something. If you just start with like, hey, we're building an app, and not even here's an app. If you just start with, I'm building an app to do this, just a quick prompt. What are considerations that would be very humanistic? I mean, at a very meta level, and then you get fantastic information. As soon as you start guiding it down a path, putting guardrails on these things, that's a bad phrase these days, but like once you put rails on the side, um, or gutters on the side, or put it on rails, it will either hallucinate a little bit more or it won't be as creative as you because it's limited by your mindset and your understanding of the situation, which by definition, if you want value from the LLM that you wouldn't have got, you don't want to, prime it with that information. That makes sense with your narrow context. So yeah, it would be great to see just to do like live prompting. I get excited, but you just go like, if from a humanistic perspective, what things should we consider? And it'll probably spit out two things you didn't think of, two that you did, and then maybe one you think is like, maybe that's not interesting.
Because I guess, as you say, as you put these constraints on, if we say I'm building an app for a trucker, and therefore this person's going to have, in this age bracket, not so good eyesight, you're putting all these constraints around it, and it's going to make assumptions again, we're humanizing an AI when it's not human, but it's going to kind of make these assumptions, it's going to guide the conversation in a very limited way. Whereas if you just say, I'm building an app for a trucker, it's going to have so much more information that it can consider as it reasons, that it's going to catch things that we wouldn't have even thought about when we're building it up front. So yeah, you kind of, it's weird. You, to get really good answers, you need to be quite specific in some cases. But I guess in these kind of scenarios where you're thinking, I don't know exactly what I need to do here, I just need some kind of general information, the broader is kind of better. If I'm solving a very specific developer problem, I need to write code that talks through this API and it needs to pass this data, write the code. I need those very constrained guardrails because I am constrained by the API.
By the API version, you probably do this all the time. Yeah, the exact API version. It's always doing the -1 syntax.
I have to be very, very specific because it's got to solve this problem. It's as I was chatting earlier, but if I'm building a Taco Bell robot, I can't say, yeah, make a taco, because someone's going to come in and expect, I want some beef and I want some lettuce and I want some cheese. They're going to be very surprised if it comes up with a completely different kind of banana and peanut butter taco. So,
although that may actually be how Taco Bell does their product research. Based on the different, somehow it's all the same 3 ingredients, but like 19 different colors and orders of layering. But that's it's a good example too, where I even generally when I do any prompting that's kind of exploratory, like, or even just task specific, I often do I have a couple of little weird ones I use all the time, like follow-on prompts, which are like, what didn't I think of? That's my favorite prompt, actually. Like, even when I'm hyper narrow, like I was yesterday trying to get some, people go to the website and they give me their URL and their email address and the name of their app, signing up for Checkie.ai stuff, right? So I've got all this inbound here, and I've got a different schema from another sign up thing I have over here. And I'm trying to get them to conform to this schema that I had created personally in a spreadsheet, right? I'm trying to do this multi-merge and normalize a schema. And I realized, like, whoa, wait here. So what I did was, after like half an hour of wrangling these different, like 5 different schemas, I just uploaded all 5 of them and I asked it to normalize the data. And you know what it did? It did it, and it did it right. And then it said, by the way, I also deduped it for you, because people had signed up on multiple channels, right? And it did an extra bit in the schema, which was very funny to me, strange, but it had an extra bit which said possible dupe, because it was the same email address, like a similar email address or a similar app name, but not exact match, right? So it did fuzzy matches on those that were possible dupes, but it kept them in there because they might not. That's like a great analyst. But the weird thing is, I was in the middle of very specific. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, a task. But then when I just back up and I say, what am I missing, or what else should I be thinking of, or is there a different way to do this? Like, they're smarter than me. So there's this weird moment in the spring for me that was scary. I think other people will come through this soon, the same process, which is I realized this machine's smarter without me. And I've been a tester for a long time, and I have ego around that. My self-esteem is based on that. Obviously, that's the only thing I could base my self-esteem on, is software testing skills with a Z. And I had to realize, like, wow, the more I'm controlling this AI, the worse results I'm getting. And because it's read every testing book, it's seen every sample code in every language and in every framework, and let it run first. So I had that kind of epiphany or that feeling. Not even it wasn't. I didn't realize that it was through practical trying to get stuff to work. But I've kind of went through this phase where I've confessed publicly a few times, where the AI is smarter than me. Like, it actually is. So I think we need to get this mode of where I'm most productive now is I assume the AI is smarter than me until proven otherwise. And then things are just far, far better. Better code generation, better test generation, better design and UI. It's pretty exciting, but I had to let go of that ego and assume that it's like, most managers are pointy-headed people. So in a weird way, we should be okay with humans managing something that's smarter than them. That means you're actually have arrived and you take credit for their work. But people won't let that ego go yet, I think, in this kind of transition that's happening. But I hit that humility in the summer.
definitely on the I can see that with the whole ego thing. It's as you say, it's when you kind of get to that management level, you're expecting a team of people who are better than you at the various tasks that they're doing to deliver something that you take credit for as the boss, because they've delivered this for you. But as kind of the person building it, letting go and saying, I trust this thing, that's hard, but partly in some ways because engineers are very skeptical people. I know that I can get AI to produce one piece of code that's probably better than what I can produce. But can it orchestrate everything together? Can it build an entire application with all these different things in one place and have that consistency across it in a way that is more productive and smarter than me, and is in a way that if I do ever need to go in there and fix things, I can. My kind of biggest worry at the moment around a lot of these tools like Cursor, where you can say make these changes across 500 files, is we're going to get to the point where humans are just code reviewing code. We lose the ability to understand code because we're not writing it anymore. We're just reading code, and then if something goes wrong, we are unable to do anything about it. We have to rely on the AI to do it because we don't understand what it is that we've built.
100%, 100% agree. Yeah, I use Cursor all the time right now, and like, the problem is it'll ask it to do well. Just the scale of number of files and the breadth of reasoning it can do is pretty narrow. Like it can deal with a few files and not a crazy amount of complexity. They're working on it, but I don't think it'll be a while. Even I'm not super optimistic on it taking like a million line code base and just with high confidence making some code changes across that code base or refactoring things. I don't think that'll be a while. And when it does that anyway, this discussion doesn't matter anyway. So until then, it's interesting to talk about it not working. But the thing is, when it generates code, I'll ask it to make something say more performant, right? Or the thing I'll often do is actually ask it to make it more robust. But you know what it does? It takes my code, which is a simpleton's code. I'm not a great programmer, and it will make it far more complicated. And it'll factor stuff out strangely sometimes, and even change data structure and how it iterates through these different properties and things like that. When it does that, now I've lost my context. So I'm dependent wholly on the AI to maintain and edit that. And I can't judge it very well to see if it's good or not personally. And then like I did was a friend of mine built a little kind of fun app. He called it a toilet app. I couldn't figure out what he's talking about, but it was like something to do, keep you busy, I guess. But it was an app that you'd play a little game. It was this whole game where you guess somebody says a word and then you say another word and you try to get the same word. At some point, it converges to the same word together. But he spent an afternoon at a coffee shop working on this. Not the end of the world, not a huge waste of resources, to see if it would be fun or not. Well, he shared it with me, and while he's talking to me, I just took the screenshots and put them into Windsurf, and it built it. And then I was telling him, hey, it'd be interesting if the AI told you why it thought that was an interesting word, right? Rather than just spitting the word back out. And and we started discussing and debating it, and he's like, yeah, I don't know if it'd be relevant, or kind of discussing. And I put it into Windsurf while we were talking, and it built a new version live while I'm talking to him. I refreshed the page, and it's doing that. It's explaining, and I'm like, no, it's kind of interesting. And then I was, it's not taking the full history into account. Take the full history. And then it provided this nice little funny, elaborate thing about like actors and what movies they were in. And I'm like, oh, that's why it picked that strange word. Like that was more interesting than the game itself, was how the AI was thinking about those relations, if that makes sense. But I did that all while I was on the phone with my friend, nerding out on this. But guess what? I don't know how to fix it. And then there was a bug. Sorry, let's get to the point. To reinforce what you're saying is just there's a bug where it would sometimes not render one of the words that were in the history of what was said. And I could not. Probably spent 8 minutes building the app, and I spent 40 minutes fighting it, saying, "Hey, you're not displaying the history." And then it would display it, but it'd be on top of everything. And then I'd say, "No, it's on top." And then it would put it lower in Z order, so you can't see any of the history. And then it was just like fighting this better programmer than me, but there was a few bits missing in him, right?
It's quick to produce something. It's not polished. It's hard to explain how to polish it exactly how you want. And the thing is, for a fun app, as you say, for a toilet app, it's not the end of the world if the app is not great.
Right.
But what if the app you're building is one for regulatory compliance, for example? You could literally shut down a company because you're sending garbage data to a regulatory body that's generated by an AI powered. But yeah, I mean, I used to work for a lot of banks, and we would have to send certain files to different regulatory bodies, and they probably did nothing with it. But if they did, and you were sending garbage, and you can go, oh, the AI did it, that's not going to fly. That
Oh yeah, no, totally. And it's and even then, like, yeah, I have this argument. I mean, in the testing world, I super care about quality, and yeah, it's even I think like there's a company called Kodo. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're one of the few people focusing on building uh, LLMs that generate high quality code rather than just a quick demo or something fun, but like kind of focus on quality first. And so I think that'll be a new trend coming in the next 18 months, because demos are actually worse than a bad demo right now, because everybody gets excited and then you get stuck in these loops like we're talking about with the quality of the code. But the funny thing is, I said some investor was asking me um, like last month about oh well, can't the AI? I'm just driving me nuts these days. But like, oh well, the AI will just write perfect code, right? And I'm like, okay, first of all, even if the AIs wrote perfect code, like I think they're pretty good when they see the source code. The latest benchmarks are that they're like of the unit tests they generate, about 60% are correct and relevant. That's a coin toss. But even though we'll still go great, it's cool. AI can even do that, right? Amazing. That's great. Um, but and forget all the human sorting out of what's good and bad and whatever. Um, the problem is that you can't put Amazon.com into a prompt. Like what is Amazon.com? It's all these microservices, like subservices, cloud infrastructure, networking, even the last mile on the last inch, the Wi-Fi router I've got. Like it's everything combined, and so that'll be the last thing that dies. I think is that subsumes to AI doing the testing work. Is it won't, even if we write perfect code, the system integration and full stack understanding not only is just like an insane amount of context, and that context is actually even real time with permutations and differences every run, um, but it all has to work at the end of the day. The business, even if it's just an AI business or a human run business, it's got to work for its client. That could even be a robot or a human, but end to end, that system has to work. And I don't see a path, um, unless it costs billions of dollars to run, to test those full integration scenarios very well and effectively, because you have to run it to know if it's going to work.
it's not just testing them; it's understanding if something breaks at one of those steps in the process, where is that break?
Yep, exactly, and it comes back down the whole chain. Exactly, back down to the, what was the root cause, and then you have to tweak it, and then guess what you got to do again? Build the whole thing again, regress it, deploy it, try it again, right?
Because your AI tester shouldn't just be it don't work. It should, yeah, a good tester doesn't just say it's broken. A good tester knows where in the chain it's broken. I used to work with someone who was fantastic. Same company in New Zealand actually, and when something didn't work, she could pretty much tell you which of all the different services and components in the system the failure was happening, because she was able to kind of trace through all the different bits of the app. So when you fix the issue, she knows which team to talk to fix the issue, because the bit that's in.
Right, but it's funny again that we're seeing the beginnings of this, where on every issue that the bugs the testing agents find, the best bug reports I've ever seen, because I have exactly that what you're talking about. I have these fields that say, first of all, why should it be fixed? Like it figures out a priority and why it should be fixed. And it says what role should probably fix it, right? What type of front end, back end, whatever. And then it also has a like a fix and like a fix suggestion. And it's open ended. It might not just be even a line of code. It might say like, I don't know, redesign this or use Redis, or if like it's a perf issue, or use. It's very open ended even on what the fix can be. It might not even be a code fix when you're talking integration testing. But the bots are starting to give better bugs than the human would have, because the tester usually that finds an accessibility bug doesn't know the technical aspects, or won't be able to look at the code, because they can do things like this, and they can figure out by the patterns of the HTML that's generated what method was probably used to add those accessibility identifiers, and tell if they're old libraries that you're leveraging that like aren't modern enough, or tell you that it's the, it matches like the last known spec. Like it's there, but it's kind of outdated or going to be deprecated soon. They do have a ton of context on finding those bugs.
Interesting you mentioned library. I want to change tack a little bit, get your thoughts on this. I was reading a bit of a conspiracy theory the other day. Now, this conspiracy theory was this idea that there's a lot of new LLMs coming out, and obviously I don't want to pinpoint the country in question, but there was LLMs coming from a particular country. The worry was, with certain LLMs, if you ask them questions, there's a lot of filters in the responses, and some filters are more geared towards nation state propaganda than others. But also, as well, LLMs could either intentionally or unintentionally guide, because they've been hacked, guide people towards unsafe practices. So one example would be if you use an LLM from a country that wanted to hack you, it may be tuned to recommend libraries that you use that have got known backdoors in them. So if you are an inexperienced developer, oh, how do I solve this problem? Oh, use this library to do it. Excellent. I'll put this library in my production code, and evil nation states going, ha ha ha, we now have access to all your machines. So you've, as well as kind of the trust of, is the code it's generating good code, you also have the, do I trust the influence behind the generation of this LLM? So how do you test for that? How do you test for an LLM that's trying to induce nation state level hacking into the code you're writing?
Right. And I think the worst offender, though, today, at least today, versus nation states, is actually Stack Overflow. That's what's trying to destroy society. Is all the code on there. But you're right, and even to even add, like, even if it just, there's a very big difference, right, in terms of professional engineering between maybe a bank and a demo app. Where do you grab the latest jQuery, or do you grab a specific version that you know is good and stay with that? Like, you actually want to stay on the, depends on your security perspective, right? One may be far better than the other because of hacks to, the latest whatever. Even Linux got hacked recently, was compromised. So you don't always even want the latest, right? And old builds might be more baked. It's just weird. It's a very weird world. But yeah, so I think there, and researchers, this, you're leading the question or whatever, but is like leading the answer is that. Yeah, I mean, in research, research has demonstrated you can inject in the training data, you can leave latent things and manipulate it with training data or post training and fine tuning, and you can do all sorts of nefarious things. I think the first check though is weird. I think what I found I've had to do, because I'm focusing on the testing stuff. Because then also the question is like, what does every tester say? Yeah, but who's testing that, right? And I go, me. But really, it's not me because I'm too lazy. I have some functions called just for to be really nerdy. We're nerdy here. I have a function called, and very simply, simplest answer possible, but I think it's interesting. Is one is I have a function called double check. I have another function called triple check, and what it is, whenever I get a response or some kind of data from an LLM, I almost always cross-check that for not just for functional correctness, but just in general, I think it's good practice because of these types of issues. Because we don't know what the baselines of these things are, and they update without even telling people to, and the internet's constantly changing. So I will have, like, if the response, and I pass along the chain of these calls, which LLM was responsible for which response, like in the chain. So if it starts with Claude, because I use different LLMs for different tasks, right? Some are better at different things. But if it started with Claude, it's a Claude response, or an Anthropic, whatever. I'll double check it with OpenAI, right? And then sometimes also third check it with another LLM. And I ask it, back to what we were saying earlier too, in terms of those prompts. What I found to be most useful is not asking for specific things about, like, the library version's wrong or whatever, but very broad, open-ended questions of, like, does this look not just correct in the prompt? If I pass the results of the first prompt to the second layer, I say, not only does this look correct, but I have a separate pass of, like, is there anything concerning or strange or weird that I may not have thought of or may not be obvious? So I have these, like, weird catch-all kind of, it's like an exception handler to an exception handler in these checks, to find out if there's anything weird going on, not just functional correctness, because it could be correct, but nefarious, right? And so the cool thing, though, is the AIs and LLMs are getting better and better and better and smarter. I think we'll have more specialized LMs that look for problems like that. But until then, you could use I don't know, maybe the Chinese model because it's dirt cheap, and it works great for code on the metro on the benchmarks. But I'm going to use for like the final PR or something like that review. I'll have that maybe done by something that's more expensive but maybe more trusted, um, and at least have a multi LLM evaluation of the correctness of the behavior of the system. And I've already got that kind of running today in my own stuff. That's because I'm a tester. But you're totally right. You can't trust just even forget functional correctness and factualness of these things with hallucinations and everything like that. But how do you know it's not even nefarious? And I think the best way to do that at any scale, it can't have humans look at everything. If you're using AI, it's not in a pipeline. Otherwise, you just have the humans do it. And still, even then, the humans are horrible. Like even a super experienced dev might be really happy with an older version of jQuery, but that's got some security vulnerabilities he just doesn't check because he thinks he knows it all now. But the noob may actually use the latest and it has some security fixes in it. So you can't really even trust humans.
And humans have been known to be horrible. I mean, some of the recent vulnerabilities have been found because a human very kindly took over an open source project over a period of years and then injected vulnerabilities in.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. I forget which library that was. Exactly, like he incubated trust for months, right? Of nothing happening and then sprung it.
So you can't necessarily trust humans.
Cross checking, I think is a very it's almost very simple, but I think it's probably the most powerful one because you have a crowd vote on the correctness or in a security or whatever aspect you're worried about. Yeah, it's been working well, and I feel like if everything's running clean, I still feel like I could wake up tomorrow, and if something was starting to go awry, one of them might catch it. And they're definitely more likely to catch it than me, especially at design time, because these things can catch things at runtime. And then it goes to an exception handler queue where maybe a human looks at it, or it just discards the data. But right today, it just discards the data because the good thing about testing is if there's a bug, but nobody knows about it, nobody knows that it wasn't discovered either, which is a strange thing about finding bugs. So, like if there's an undiscovered bug, like nobody knows, hey, you missed that. So I default if it doesn't look like a good, high quality, high confidence bug, you can set the threshold. But if it's kind of out of whack or it looks scary or doesn't look safe, it just goes to a reject queue.
Okay, so it's kind of this kind of cool idea if you build this pipeline of different LLMs to kind of test each other, different confidence levels and everything that you do, and then I guess finally at the end, a human looks at it and goes, yes, no.
Yeah, I auto discard things that don't pass the whack-a-noodle. If you really want to know, my function's called whack-a-noodle. But
I mean, that's a fantastic name for a function. All functions should have that.
but those just go to the discard pile. I even had the thought I probably shouldn't save those to disk because it could be a latent security thing or something. But ultimately, when things pass a certain bar in the UX that I present to customers, is there's a thumbs up, thumbs down, and the human at the end of the day goes, yeah, good robot or bad robot, and particularly because quality is weird. Quality is like you were saying this earlier a little bit, but quality is it's a it's a multifaceted. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? And some truckers may have very great eyesight, and so they feel like they're using a child's calculator, app or something. If the buttons are huge and it's insulting to them or it's inefficient, so it's hard to optimize for everybody, right? It's impossible. So, but even in quality, like sometimes during even the middle where you are in a cycle, a dev cycle or release cycle, um, at the beginning of it, maybe you care about accessibility issues. If it's Thursday night and you're supposed to ship right before the holiday for Christmas and it's a retail site, like you go, that sucks. We really we're not happy with ourselves, but we ship it with the accessibility issue. Like that happens. So even time of day or time of day of week can determine what should be fixed or what is a bug or what isn't a bug at that time. Triage can change.
I guess you can then tune that in the AI, can't you? You can have your AI testing pipeline. You go, this is we have to ship it today pipeline. This is our perfect pipeline. And then, as you say, it's the day before Black Friday. You need to push out an update. You just put it through the we have to ship this today pipeline, and sorry, we feel really bad about this, but we just got to get it out so we can sell stuff to you. And then once you got through that, you then put it through the other pipe.
But that's, I think, where AI is going to really help all those things, even a very practical. Forget it being like super smart and everything. Is the cool thing is like with my Checkie.ai stuff. This is why I think Whitaker connected us probably is. I'm thinking about it much like a Google, where Google just crawls websites even if you don't ask them to, right? Even sometimes we tell them not to, and they create a public index of all that data. And so what I'm doing also with my stuff is that I'm having the bots do arguably something more complex than Google, but actually test the website, test all these websites, and then build what I call the app quality index. So you can get all that accessibility data pre-tested. So even before I've tested thousands of apps and I've got accessibility bugs. By the way, I just shared one. I'm scared to look in the corpus every time. I just sent one to somebody today that was a cross-site scripting vulnerability because they're doing document.write and some library and like even a security issue, right? And I'm sending it to them, but I'm almost afraid to look because I'm morally obligated to send. I'll just be sending them to people all day. But in those short cycles, the cool thing is you can know up front with AI because it's so inexpensive and fast and pretty intelligent. It can do a broad range of testing. So you get all of your accessibility issues the first day of your sprint, not on the last day. So I think that'll change the game in that sense, is that you get broad coverage on all these important like privacy, security, accessibility, not just functionality, but also in UI design. But every day because the machines are so much faster and less expensive than humans. So you use them. You should use them a lot more, like 100 times more often than you would do it with a traditional human doing that type of test. So I think that's where a lot of the quality will come in because you find it in time to fix it.
Yeah, you bring it in nice and early. So you start doing that UI testing when you have the design before you even started committing code for it. And then
Exactly.
once you've kind of got through that, you don't need to, if you're worried about the cost because you're burning lots of CPU time, you don't need to do the UI testing or the accessibility testing anymore because the UI is fixed now. Then you do the functional testing or what have you. So you can then scale that testing up and down depending on where you are, what code changes you've made. Oh, I'm just working on some back end code. Nothing's changed in the UI. Let's just do functional testing tonight because my tests take 1,000 hours to run and I don't want to pay CPU time for it. You've got that.
Well, I just don't even have that many people to do it or haven't written them yet. That's the big thing is usually no one writes the automation for the sprint in that sprint because it's not really working until the end of the sprint. But with AI, it can adapt kind of every day. And I had one, there's a funny thing I discovered this summer. I did not realize that's back to kind of just saying more about these humanistic kind of meta fuzzy things is that, and AI is being good for it is I talked to, quite a few vendors, testing vendors, and their biggest issue, I thought you do all this automated stuff and that should be great. Yay, everybody's happy. Their biggest mental blocker was a business thing, which was they're all blocked on specifications. So they have a client that has, they're doing their thing, their engineers are adding features and buttons, but they can't really start unless they have a specification for its requirement stock. And I'm like, how could you possibly be blocked? Because you can see the button, like try it, right? But I was naive because the reality is you don't want to do work that isn't required yet, right? Because that's a waste of time, and it could be false positives back to the engineers or whatever, the client. So the funny thing though is the big friction turns out to be the writing of that spec. Because you can ask and you can give the UX or what, even just simple or an API description, but you can give it to the AI and say, reverse engineer a product specification for me, requirement stock. And guess what it does? Da, 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 da. And then the humans go in because the big emotional problem is no one wants to write it until it's done because revisions are expensive and everything. But you can also ask it for each item that it puts in requirements. How confident are you that this would change in the sprint or not? And if you give it the last screenshots of the last 4 builds, it goes, this has been steady state the whole time, right? Either it's an old feature, which is obvious, or it's a new feature and it hasn't changed since Monday, right? It's probably not going to change. So then you now have a specification and you can send that back to your client and just say, because they don't want to write the whole thing up, but now they can just redline it. Boom, 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 boom. So that's just another example of where people keep thinking, I naively keep thinking the AI is great at doing the thing, but we need that human to do the human and human interaction. in this case, it's an example, and it wasn't. I didn't even invent it. I'm not trying to push some narrative or something. I'm an idiot. I didn't realize it. That the problem was actually the human in the human workflow. uh, really, humans, I think, at the end of the day, we apply AI, right? You didn't ask me this, but I'm mouthing off right now. You got me loose as a goose. But the key thing is that when you take the human out of the loop, really the humans should be the exception handlers. That's what we're good at. And so as much, I think really AIify almost everything you can, and then humans are the exception handlers. Whenever you inject the human in the loop, you're adding constraints, you're restricting the creativity of the AI, even the ability of the AI to do what it thinks it should do. And even in human to human communication across companies, where people think, oh, I'm a human, I'm unique, the AI can't do that. It's amazingly humanistic and can reverse engineer um, not only not only what the right humanistic thing is, like this qualitative, this is the requirement, and I'm 90% sure that it won't change and all that stuff. By the way, most specs don't have that, right? But not only can it do that, it probably does it better than the, the product manager or project manager at your client, because that's one dude that you happen to apply, to happen to live in the area, that applied for the job, that got through the interview loop, right? What are the odds that he's actually better at writing a spec than the AI, which has seen every spec on the planet? Probably pretty low. So you actually get better requirement stocks and analysis often when you let the AI do things AI first.
And then the product managers, their job really is to guide the AI into creating this, because someone has to be the person to say to the AI, we need an app to do X.
Exactly, to initiate the projects, and I think to when something goes awry, and it does, it will. Even humans go awry all the time, but when it does go awry, then a human at least comes and double checks that, and you have trust in that human. Ultimately, I'm not anti humans in the loop, but I think we're going to discover over the next 12 to 18 months that most of those humans in the loop are not the best expert in the planet, especially compared to AI, and they're far more expensive and slower and even less consistent than an AI. You know, the whole thing where the judges are far less likely to give people bad, like long sentences right after lunch. Have you heard this one?
Yes, yeah, the parole board thing, isn't it? You've got a high chance of getting parole after lunch when people have eaten. Yeah.
Right, right. So the AI doesn't have lunch. So the odds that, because people complain that, oh, the AI is not predictable, or we just you can turn the temperature down. Most people don't even know that. But even if you do that, like there's some variation, it's probably no one. I haven't seen people really quantify this, but it's probably less variation than the average human, even the same human over multiple days in a week or times during the day.
So your basic conclusion is we're all going to be out of work soon. AI is going to do everything.
Yeah,
So where does the human fit into this cycle? Where does what is, I know this is kind of potentially dystopian view on the future that the AI is going to do everything. Yeah, are we going to achieve this situation where the AI is doing so much that we can only work 2 days a week and still earn enough money to enjoy ourselves?
so I've bought a lot of origami books. No, I'm kidding. Uh, I'm past the swans, and I'm into like the frogs and everything now. Preparing with the two color, the white on one side, color on the other.
But I mean,
I think,
there's a quote from I saw a while ago. I can't remember the woman who did it, so apologies to her for not crediting her. But she was saying, "I don't want AI to make music and write literature so I can do laundry and the dishes. I want AI to do laundry and the dishes so I can write music and create literature." And there's a certain truth to that. Is I'm an engineer because I love writing code. I don't want the AI to write code. I want to write it because it's fun. So at what point do we push back against this AI generation, because we want to enjoy it? We want to actually have pleasure in the thing that we've created. It's not about, yes, the AI can do it cheaper. It's, but I like this. I don't want it to go away.
yeah, I'll be very honest about it. I think it's way above my pay grade. And by the way, I think it's above most every. I've read a lot of books on it. Even the latest Bostrom book, like his original one, is pretty good. But I think it's even above their pay grade. Yeah, I get painted quickly in that corner. But I paint myself in that corner because then why do I exist? Literally, if fully follow my logic, I should be on vacation right now and just chill. Why am I wrestling AI to do software testing? Like, yeah, the AI will just do it. Like there's two VCs I talked to right before the holidays were like, yeah, wouldn't the AI just write perfect code or be able to test itself? And I'm like, okay, but then, by the way, you're out of business. Like, good luck investing in SaaS, and there'll just be one investment that works, and everything will be free anyway in open source. The people that say AI won't be able to do all that will be correct until they suddenly aren't, and it won't matter then. So it's always better and safer and more interesting to be on the side that AI won't quite be able to do everything. But it's getting really difficult to say that if you're a knowledge worker these days. I mean, I'm using Cursor. It's a better programmer than I am. And why doesn't it build the thing that I'm building right now? Because I probably haven't spent $1,000 a prompt on O3. That's probably why. Like literally, that's probably why. I even ask it. Like, here's all the trend, given all the trends in AI and stuff. If I'm a software tester with this many, I can copy paste my resume in there. And I go, what should I do, right? And the answer, half guided by me though, was, get while the going's good. And it's probably the most. Okay, I'll tell you the real answer. Sorry, I'll be very straight. That the next few years are going to be the best time to make money, and nobody knows what happens after this knowledge worker singularity. Uh, Forget the larger singularity. But the best way to prepare for that is to have stashed some cash for the emergency, and Bitcoin and Solana, and maybe even some Filecoin, big on Filecoin, because there's a lot more data to be stored. But you've got to just, I think you've got to get as much cash as you can and distribute it in as many different vehicles as possible, because no one knows what's going to happen when that singularity hits or even gets close. I think anyone that thinks that they know or they don't have enough humility. But we know that there's a danger of it. And if you look at the probability, it's all risk analysis, like in testing. What's the probability this happens, and what's the consequence? Well, if the consequence is I'm unemployable now, or the only jobs are things I wouldn't want to do, like doing the laundry or whatever, I better make hay while I can. Because if I'm right, that's great, right? At least I've got the resources to survive past that, this danger zone. And if I'm wrong, guess what? I'm still yeah, and made as much hay as I can. So that's kind of my thought. But I really do think there really only need to be a handful of, even in the interim. I think things are converging quickly. There only need to be a handful of testing tools and testing companies soon. I think that's a very clear path to that.
I think that's probably a good note to wrap up with. No, I really appreciate taking time to this. This was a lot of fun.
All right, thanks for geeking out, man.